Subscribe to me, please. Support with a comment or a like.
Cristiano Ronaldo had always been admired for his dazzling footwork, the thunder of his goals, and the trophies he lifted high under the bright stadium lights. But what people often did not see was the human being behind the fame, the man who had grown up with little, and who still remembered what it meant to be hungry, cold, and uncertain about tomorrow. Far away from the roar of the arenas and the shining flashes of cameras, there lived a man in Lisbon named Miguel Silva. Miguel was in his mid-40s but looked older, worn down by years of hardship. Once a factory worker, he had lost his job after the closure of the plant and never found stable work again. He survived by doing whatever he could: odd jobs, painting fences, carrying boxes, repairing broken chairs. It was never enough. The bills piled up, the small apartment he rented became harder to keep, and the fridge often stood almost empty. He had a son, Tiago, only 10 years old, a bright-eyed boy who loved football with all his heart. Football was more than a game to him. It was a dream, a flame that kept him smiling even when dinner was no more than a crust of stale bread. Tiago's idol was Cristiano Ronaldo, and despite their poverty, he had once managed to get a second-hand jersey with the number 7 printed on the back. It was too large for him, the fabric faded, but he wore it like royal armor. Miguel loved his son dearly, and it was Tiago's smile that gave him the strength to keep going. Yet it was also what cut him the deepest, for he knew he could not provide the life his boy deserved. At night, when Tiago was asleep, Miguel would sit by the small window of their apartment and stare at the city lights, asking himself why life had dealt him such harsh cards. His wife had passed away years ago, and since then it was only the two of them, father and son, clinging to each other against the storms of poverty. One chilly autumn evening, Tiago begged his father to take him to the city center to watch the Champions League match on the big screen outside a cafe. They could not dream of affording tickets to the stadium, but even standing among strangers and watching the screen from the sidewalk would be enough for the boy. Miguel hesitated. He was tired, hungry, and ashamed of their situation, but he could not deny his son this simple joy. Together they walked to the square, and there, with dozens of others, they stood in the cold and watched Real Madrid take the field. The night was alive with energy. People cheered, cursed, and laughed. Tiago's eyes sparkled as if he had been transported into a different world. Miguel watched him more than he watched the screen, for seeing that joy on his son's face was worth every hardship. Then came the moment. The familiar figure in white, number 7 on his back, rose above the defenders and struck the ball with his head. It flew like a missile into the net, and the cafe erupted with cheers. Tiago screamed with excitement, hugging his father tightly, jumping up and down as if the goal had been scored just for him. Miguel smiled through the ache in his chest, for he wished he could give his son the chance to see such moments live in a stadium, not just on a screen. After the match ended, Tiago did not want to go home. He tugged at his father's sleeve, pleading, "Papa, can we go near the stadium?" Maybe we will see him." Miguel laughed softly at the innocence. "My boy, do you know how many guards surround men like him? We are invisible to them." But Tiago insisted, his hope stronger than his father's skepticism, and Miguel, unable to deny that hope, agreed. They walked toward the stadium and joined the small crowd of fans waiting by the gates, long after most people had gone home. The night grew colder, and Miguel wrapped his old jacket around Tiago's shoulders. Hours passed. Cars with tinted windows came and went, carrying away the stars hidden behind glass. The crowd dwindled until only a handful remained, and then fate intervened. One of the sleek black cars slowed down. The window rolled down, and there he was, Cristiano Ronaldo himself. The crowd gasped, but Ronaldo's eyes scanned past them until they fell upon a small boy in an oversized jersey and the tired man standing beside him. For reasons he could not fully explain, something in that picture struck him deeply. Perhaps it was the boy's wide eyes filled with innocence, or perhaps it was the father's weary face that mirrored his own memories of poverty. Whatever it was, he lifted his hand and signaled for the car to stop. The boy froze, his heart thundering. Miguel could barely breathe. Ronaldo stepped out, not caring about the murmurs of surprise. He walked straight to Tiago, kneeling to meet him at eye level. "What's your name, champ?" he asked in Portuguese, his voice warm and direct. "Tiago," the boy whispered. "Tiago," Ronaldo repeated with a smile. "That is a strong name." "Do you play football?" "Yes," Tiago said, his cheeks red, "but we don't have a real ball." He lowered his eyes, ashamed of his confession. Ronaldo's expression softened. He glanced at Miguel, and in that single glance he saw the truth. The worn shoes, the tired shoulders, the quiet dignity in the man's eyes despite his hardship. It was a face Ronaldo knew, because he had seen it in his own family, in his father, in neighbors from Madeira. Without hesitation, he turned to his assistant, who quickly opened the car trunk and returned with a brand new football. Ronaldo handed it to Tiago, whose eyes filled with tears as he clutched it like treasure. "Obrigado, Senhor Ronaldo," the boy said, his voice trembling with joy. But Ronaldo did not stop there. He looked back at Miguel, studying him carefully. "Is everything all right with you, my friend?" he asked quietly. Miguel swallowed hard. Pride and desperation battled within him. He wanted to nod, to pretend, but the truth weighed too heavily. His lips trembled as he said, "No, senor, everything is not all right." The air grew still. Around them, the few remaining fans murmured, but it was as though the world had faded, leaving only these three souls. Ronaldo reached out, placing a firm hand on Miguel's shoulder. "Come tomorrow," he said, pulling a card from his pocket and writing an address on it. "Bring your boy. We will talk." Miguel stared at the paper in disbelief. Was this real? Could it be possible that the greatest footballer in the world was offering him a chance? He took it with trembling hands, his heart pounding with both fear and hope. That night, back in their small apartment, Tiago fell asleep hugging the ball, smiling as though all his dreams had already come true. Miguel, however, sat in silence, staring at the piece of paper. He thought of his wife, of all the nights of hunger, of the endless struggle to keep his son safe. For the first time in years, something stirred in his chest. Hope. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew that fate had shifted. Perhaps the encounter had been an accident, or perhaps it was destiny, but one thing was certain. Their lives would never be the same again. The following morning, Miguel rose earlier than usual. He had barely slept, tossing and turning with the weight of the little card he had placed carefully under a glass of water on the table, as if it were some sacred relic. The address scribbled on it seemed to glow with possibility, and yet the fear of disappointment gnawed at him. What if it was a mistake? What if Ronaldo had said it only to be polite? What if they went there and were turned away? These questions haunted him, but when he looked at his son's face, bright with hope as he hugged the new football, he knew he had to try. They set out across Lisbon with the morning sun painting the city golden. Tiago wore his oversized jersey proudly, holding the ball as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Miguel, his heart heavy but his steps determined, guided his son through the winding streets until they arrived at the address. It was not a stadium nor a training ground, but a private foundation office, quiet, respectable, discreet. A man in a suit greeted them at the door. Miguel stammered, unsure of what to say, but the man smiled warmly. "You must be Miguel and Tiago. Mr. Ronaldo is expecting you." The words almost made Miguel collapse. Expecting them? It was real. He followed the man inside, his hands trembling. The office was modern yet modest, filled with photographs of smiling children, families, and communities Ronaldo's foundation had supported. Miguel had not known the true scale of the footballer's charitable work until that moment. He felt small, overwhelmed, but also strangely comforted. This was a place of kindness, not judgment. After a few minutes, the door opened, and Cristiano himself walked in, dressed simply, without the glamour of television appearances. He greeted them warmly, first kneeling to ruffle Tiago's hair, and then shaking Miguel's hand firmly. "I am glad you came," he said, leading them to sit at a round table. The conversation began gently. Ronaldo asked Tiago about his favorite position in football, his favorite goals, his dreams. The boy, shy at first, quickly warmed up and began talking animatedly about playing as a forward, about scoring like his hero. Ronaldo listened with patience and genuine interest, nodding and laughing at the boy's enthusiasm. Then his gaze shifted to Miguel. "Tell me about yourself," he said softly. Miguel hesitated, pride warring with honesty. But something in Ronaldo's eyes, steady, compassionate, made him speak. He told him about the factory job he had lost, about the long search for work, about the debts, about the nights when dinner was nothing but bread and water. He spoke of Tiago's mother, taken from them too soon, leaving a hole in their lives. He confessed his shame, his fear of failing his son. By the time he finished, Miguel's voice was trembling. He lowered his head, unable to look Ronaldo in the eye. But Ronaldo reached across the table and laid a hand on his arm. "You are not failing your son," he said firmly. "You are here. You fight for him every day. That is not failure, that is strength." Miguel's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken to him that way, not in years. Cristiano continued, "I know what it is to come from nothing. My family was poor too. We did not always have enough to eat. I would not be who I am today if others had not believed in me. So let me do for you what others once did for me." From that day forward, things began to change. Ronaldo arranged for Miguel to receive assistance through his foundation. He provided groceries, clothing, and school supplies for Tiago. More importantly, he offered something far greater: dignity. He did not give it as charity, but as friendship. Over the weeks that followed, Miguel and Tiago visited the foundation often. Tiago was sometimes allowed to watch training sessions from the sidelines, his eyes wide with awe as he saw professionals play. One afternoon, Ronaldo even invited him onto the field after practice. He tossed him the ball and said, "Show me what you can do, Tiago." The boy, nervous but thrilled, kicked with all his might, his small body full of determination. The ball rolled clumsily, but Ronaldo clapped anyway, laughing. "Not bad for a future champion," he said. Tiago beamed, his cheeks glowing with pride. Miguel watched from the side, his heart full. For the first time in years, he saw his son not as a boy weighed down by poverty, but as a child with dreams within reach. Cristiano did not stop at small gestures. He quietly arranged medical checkups for Tiago, knowing how easily children in poverty could fall ill without proper care. He offered Miguel part-time work through the foundation. Maintenance, deliveries, simple tasks that provided income with dignity. Miguel accepted with gratitude, though his pride still made him uneasy at times. But each time he looked at his son's smiling face, he knew he could not refuse. In those weeks, conversations grew deeper. Miguel and Cristiano spoke not only about poverty, but about life, about family, about the struggles that shape a man. Miguel was surprised at how human, how approachable Ronaldo was. Despite the millions he earned, despite the fame, he carried himself with humility. He listened more than he spoke, yet not everything was easy. Some in the media caught wind of Ronaldo's new friendship. Tabloids speculated, whispering about whether it was genuine or a publicity stunt. Miguel read some of the cruel headlines and felt sick. He did not want to be a burden, a story used by strangers for gossip. He even considered walking away. But when he confessed this to Ronaldo, the footballer shook his head. "Let them talk. People will always talk. What matters is the truth between us. You are my friend, Miguel, and Tiago is like family now. That is all that matters." Miguel realized then that this was no passing gesture. Ronaldo's kindness was not for the cameras, not for the applause. It was real. One evening, after returning from the foundation, Tiago asked his father, "Papa, do you think I can be like him one day?" Miguel smiled, brushing the boy's hair back. "Maybe not in goals, my son, but in heart. You already are." The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and a new rhythm began in their lives. Poverty had not disappeared, but hope had returned. Miguel no longer felt alone in his struggle. His son was happier, healthier, and more determined than ever. And in the quiet moments when Miguel allowed himself to believe in miracles, he thanked destiny for that night outside the stadium, when Cristiano Ronaldo had stopped, lowered his window, and seen them. For Miguel, it was not simply about the material help. It was about the friendship, the dignity restored, the reminder that even in the harshest of lives, kindness could still shine like a beacon. And for Tiago, it was about discovering that heroes were not only players on the field, but men who cared beyond it. Life had begun to feel brighter for Miguel and his son. The mornings were no longer filled with dread about where the next meal would come from. and the evenings carried with them a peace they had long forgotten. Tiago grew stronger, healthier, and more confident. Miguel himself, though still cautious, felt the burden of despair lifting, replaced by a fragile but real sense of hope. Cristiano Ronaldo had entered their world like a beam of light cutting through years of darkness. Yet, as Miguel would soon learn, even light casts shadows, and every gift of destiny comes with new trials. The first signs of trouble appeared quietly, like storm clouds on a distant horizon. Miguel's landlord, who had always turned a blind eye to late rent, suddenly demanded full payment. "I've heard things," the man said one evening, his tone sharp. "If you have friends with money, you can pay what you owe." The words stung Miguel deeply. He realized with horror that news of his connection to Ronaldo had spread further than he imagined. At the same time, tabloids began running stories. Headlines painted in bold letters questioned the sincerity of Ronaldo's relationship with a poor man from Lisbon. Some claimed Miguel was exploiting the footballer, while others suggested Ronaldo was using Miguel as a prop to polish his image. Photographers even lurked near the foundation offices, snapping pictures of Miguel and Tiago as they entered or left. Miguel felt the pressure mounting. Each time he saw his name twisted in the media, his pride bled. He wanted to disappear, to shield Tiago from the poison of gossip. More than once he considered ending their visits, convinced that he was only dragging Ronaldo into unwanted scrutiny. The breaking point came one evening when Tiago returned home from school in tears. "The other kids said you are only friends with Senor Ronaldo because he is rich," he sobbed. "They said you are using him, that we are beggars." Miguel's heart shattered. He held his son tightly, whispering, "That is not true, my boy. Don't listen to them. We know the truth." But inside, Miguel's shame burned like fire. The next day he gathered his courage and went to speak with Ronaldo. He found him after training, away from the cameras, and confessed everything. The landlord's cruelty, the media's lies, the children's mockery. "I cannot do this to you," Miguel said, his voice breaking. "I cannot be the reason they slander your name. You have given us so much already. Please let us step aside. Live your life without this burden." Cristiano listened quietly, his eyes steady. Then he shook his head firmly. "Miguel, do you think I care what they write? They have lied about me since the day I became famous. They said I was arrogant, selfish, even heartless. But I know who I am, and the people who matter know it too. You and Tiago are not a burden. You are my friends. That is the truth. But the shame," Miguel whispered. "The shame is heavy. Shame belongs to those who mock kindness," Ronaldo replied, "not to those who receive it." The words struck Miguel like a revelation. For years he had carried the weight of failure, of poverty, of being judged. But here was a man who had everything: fame, wealth, glory. And yet he spoke of shame not as Miguel's burden, but as society's cruelty. For the first time, Miguel began to believe that perhaps his dignity could not be stolen by rumors. Yet even as Ronaldo's words gave him strength, new trials came. Tiago's grandmother, Miguel's elderly mother, fell gravely ill. She lived in a small village far from Lisbon, and the cost of her treatment was beyond anything Miguel could imagine. Doctors spoke in cold clinical terms: surgery, medication, long-term care. Miguel listened, numb, knowing it was impossible. That night he sat in his small apartment, his head in his hands. Tiago watched him silently, clutching the football Ronaldo had given him. Finally, the boy whispered, "Papa, maybe Senor Ronaldo can help." Miguel's pride flared instantly. "No," he said sharply. "We cannot always ask. We cannot live like beggars. But he is our friend," Tiago replied softly. "And friends help." Miguel said nothing, torn between pride and desperation. The following day, Ronaldo visited them. He noticed the heavy silence, the worry etched on Miguel's face. "Something is wrong," he said immediately. Miguel tried to deny it, but Ronaldo's persistence broke through. Finally, with tears in his eyes, Miguel confessed about his mother. Without hesitation, Ronaldo placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we will help her. She will have the best care." Miguel shook his head violently. No, I cannot let you do this. It is too much. You have already done more than anyone could." Cristiano's eyes burned with conviction. "Miguel, listen to me. When I was a boy, there were people who gave me chances. who believed in me, who made sacrifices for me. If they had not, I would not be here. This is not about money. This is about gratitude, about passing on what was once given to me. Do not take away my chance to do the same. The words silenced Miguel. He realized that in refusing help, he was not protecting his pride. He was denying Ronaldo the chance to express his own humanity. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. Within days, Ronaldo arranged for Miguel's mother to receive treatment in one of the best hospitals. Doctors who had once spoken with cold detachment now worked with urgency and care, aware of who had ensured their patient's admission. Miguel spent nights by his mother's bedside, overwhelmed with gratitude. Each time he saw the improvement in her health, he silently thanked not only Ronaldo, but God for the miracle of their meeting. But the trials did not end there. News of Ronaldo's generosity toward Miguel spread again, and this time the backlash was harsher. Why him? Journalists asked, why does Ronaldo choose this man over countless others in need? The implication was cruel, that Miguel had done something manipulative, that he was undeserving. Strangers even approached him in the street, some begging for introductions, others spitting accusations. Miguel grew weary. The weight of being in Ronaldo's orbit was heavier than he had ever expected, yet through it all, Thiago thrived. The boy, inspired by Ronaldo's belief in him, trained harder, studied with more focus, and carried himself with new confidence. When others mocked, he remembered Ronaldo's words, "Shame belongs to those who mock kindness." The true test of their friendship came late one night when Miguel, exhausted from visiting his mother, returned home to find a group of men waiting near his building. They sneered, calling him a parasite, accusing him of exploiting Ronaldo. One even shoved him against the wall. Miguel, though weary, stood his ground. "You do not know me," he said. "You do not know what I carry." The confrontation might have turned violent, but a neighbor intervened and the men dispersed. Miguel, shaken, realized just how dangerous envy could be. He considered again ending his connection with Ronaldo, if only to protect his son from such hostility. But when he confessed this once more, Ronaldo looked at him with unwavering determination. "Miguel, friendship is not something you run from when it becomes difficult. Trials test it, and if our friendship cannot survive trials, then it is not real. But I believe it is real, do you?" Miguel swallowed hard, then nodded. "Yes, I believe." And so, despite the whispers, despite the dangers, he chose to remain by Ronaldo's side. He chose to believe in kindness over cynicism, in friendship over fear. For every obstacle, there was also growth. Miguel began to walk taller, no longer bowing his head in shame when passing strangers. Thiago began to speak of his future with confidence, dreaming not only of football, but of helping others as Ronaldo had helped them. And Ronaldo himself, though burdened by the constant demands of fame, found in Miguel and Thiago something rare, a reminder of who he truly was beneath the celebrity. The trials had not broken them. Instead, they had bound them closer. The storms of envy, gossip, and hardship had raged, but the foundation of kindness held firm. And as Miguel watched his son sleep one night, peaceful for the first time in years, he whispered into the darkness, "We are not alone anymore." The weeks following the storm of rumors and confrontations were difficult, but they also prepared Miguel for the moment that would forever change his life. Though he had tried to carry his struggles in silence, Ronaldo always seemed to sense when something weighed on him. One evening, after a long training session, Ronaldo called Miguel into his office at the foundation. He offered him a seat, poured him a glass of water, and asked, "Tell me what troubles you today." Miguel hesitated, as he always did when pride and desperation wrestled inside him. But Ronaldo's eyes were patient, waiting. Finally, Miguel confessed the truth. His debts had grown heavier, his landlord was threatening eviction, and he feared that he and Thiago might soon lose their home. He spoke haltingly, ashamed, his words breaking like fragile glass. "I have tried everything, Cristiano," he whispered. "But I cannot keep up, and I do not want Thiago to suffer for my failures." For a long moment, Ronaldo was silent. He leaned back in his chair, his hands folded, thinking. Then with a quiet firmness, he said, "You will not lose your home. Not while I am here." Miguel shook his head violently. "No, I cannot ask you for this. You have already done so much. Feeding us, helping my mother, giving Tiago hope. How can I take more? Where is my dignity if I depend on you for everything? Ronaldo leaned forward, his gaze sharp but compassionate. Miguel, dignity is not lost when you accept help. It is lost when you stop fighting for your family. And I see you fighting every day. This is not charity. This is friendship. And sometimes friendship means carrying one another when the weight is too heavy. Miguel lowered his eyes, tears blurring his vision. He wanted to protest again, but the strength in Ronaldo's voice silenced him. Within days, arrangements were made. Ronaldo quietly paid off Miguel's debts and spoke personally with the landlord, ensuring that Miguel and Tiago would not be evicted. But he did more than that. He purchased the apartment outright and placed it in Miguel's name. When he handed Miguel the papers, Miguel nearly collapsed. He stared at the documents, shaking, unable to comprehend the enormity of the gift. I cannot accept this, he whispered. You must, Ronaldo replied, because this is not only about you. It is about Tiago. He deserves a safe place to grow, a home where he can dream. This is my gesture not to you alone, but to him. One day he will understand what it means to pass kindness forward. Miguel fell to his knees, overcome with emotion. How can I ever repay you? He asked, his voice breaking. Ronaldo placed a hand on his shoulder. By living with hope. By teaching your son the values that matter. Kindness, hard work, humility. That is all the repayment I need. Word of Ronaldo's gesture spread quickly, but this time the story could not be twisted into something cynical. Even the harshest tabloids struggled to criticize a man who had not only given money, but had given a family a future. Instead of mockery, the public responded with admiration. Stories of Ronaldo's kindness flooded social media, and people around the world shared their own tales of how the footballer had touched lives quietly, without cameras. But the gesture did not end with Miguel's home. Ronaldo invited Miguel to work more closely with his foundation, giving him responsibilities in organizing events, distributing aid, and managing volunteers. For the first time in years, Miguel had steady work, not as a laborer scraping by, but as a man trusted with responsibility and purpose. His pride returned, not in wealth, but in knowing he was part of something greater than himself. Tiago, too, was transformed. With stability at home and encouragement from his idol, he flourished at school and on the football pitch. Ronaldo often trained with him privately, offering tips, cheering him on, laughing at his clumsy mistakes, but always lifting him higher. One day, Ronaldo told him, "You will not only play the game, you will carry others, as I carry you now." The highlight came when Ronaldo organized a large charity match, inviting friends from across the football world. The proceeds would go to children in need, but Ronaldo insisted that Miguel and Tiago attend as his special guests. When they arrived at the stadium, Tiago's eyes widened in wonder. For the first time, he stepped onto the sacred grass of a professional field, hand in hand with his father and his hero. Before the match began, Ronaldo spoke to the crowd. His words echoed through the stadium. "Football has given me much, fame, success, joy. But the greatest gift it has given me is the chance to help others. Tonight, I want to remind everyone that greatness is not measured only in goals or trophies, but in the lives we touch. I want to tell you the story of my friend Miguel and his son Tiago. They remind me every day of what truly matters." The crowd erupted in applause, not for the superstar, but for the message. Miguel, sitting in the stands with tears streaming down his face, felt the crushing weight of shame finally lift. No longer was he a man defined by poverty and failure. He was part of a story of hope. After the match, Ronaldo led Tiago onto the pitch, handing him the ball. "This one is yours," he said with a smile. Tiago's small hands trembled as he held it, his eyes shining with pride. For the boy, it was not just a ball. It was a symbol that his dreams were valid, that his life mattered. From that day, Miguel and Tiago's lives entered a new chapter. They had a home, steady work, health, and most importantly, dignity. But beyond material security, they had something even greater. Friendship that had been tested and proven true. Ronaldo's great gesture was not only in what he gave, but in how he gave it, not as a handout, not as a performance for the cameras, but as a brother, a friend, a man who understood suffering and chose to heal it. And as Miguel watched his son grow with newfound hope, he knew that one act of kindness had indeed changed everything. Years passed more quickly than Miguel could have imagined. The days of hunger and despair faded into memory, replaced by a steady rhythm of stability and quiet joy. The little apartment that had once been a fragile shelter became a true home, filled with laughter, warmth, and the smell of food on the stove. Tiago grew taller, stronger, and more confident, his boyish innocence gradually giving way to the fire of a young man with dreams. And always at the center of their story was the friendship that had begun on a cold night outside a stadium, the friendship with Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano remained a constant presence in their lives, though his own world was ever-changing. Matches, championships, awards, interviews, and endless travel, his schedule never slowed. Yet he always found time for Miguel and Tiago. Sometimes it was a quiet dinner together, sometimes a simple phone call to ask how they were. For Tiago, these moments were priceless. To the world, Ronaldo was an icon, but to him, he was simply a mentor, a brother, almost a second father. Miguel often reflected on how extraordinary it was that such a bond could exist between men from such different worlds. He had once feared that he would be swallowed forever by poverty and anonymity. Yet destiny had placed his path across that of one of the most famous men alive. And in that meeting, Miguel had learned that true greatness is not measured by wealth or fame, but by the ability to see and honor the humanity in another person. As Tiago entered his teenage years, he began to show real talent on the football pitch. With guidance from Ronaldo and his coaches, his skills sharpened. He was not the fastest nor the strongest, but he had heart. He played with a determination that made others take notice. Each time he laced up his boots, he remembered the night his hero had knelt before him and asked his name. Each time he touched the ball, he carried within him the legacy of kindness that had lifted his family from despair. Meanwhile, Miguel found pride in his work with the foundation. No longer was he a man defined by his struggles. He had become someone who could offer hope to others. He organized food drives, coordinated medical assistance, and comforted families in distress. Often he would tell them his own story, not to boast, but to remind them that miracles were possible. "Do not give up," he would say. "Even in the darkest night, light can find you." And when they looked at him with disbelief, he would smile and add, "I know, because it happened to me." The bond between Miguel and Cristiano deepened over the years. They spoke not just as benefactor and beneficiary, but as men who shared the burdens of life. Ronaldo confided in Miguel about the pressures of fame, the loneliness that sometimes accompanied success, the pain of losing privacy. Miguel, in turn, spoke honestly of his fears as a father, his memories of loss, and his gratitude for every day of peace. Their friendship was no longer defined by charity. It was built on trust, loyalty, and mutual respect. One evening, as the sun set over Lisbon, Cristiano invited Miguel and Tiago to his home for dinner. The meal was simple but joyful, filled with laughter and stories. Afterward, Cristiano led them to his study, where walls were lined with trophies, medals, and photographs from his career. He gestured around the room and said, "All of this means nothing compared to the people I have been able to help. Yunde Tiago, you must understand that success is only truly valuable when you share it." Tiago nodded solemnly. "I want to be like you," he said. Cristiano smiled. "Be better than me. Score your goals, yes. Win your matches. But most importantly, never forget the power of kindness. That is your true legacy." Miguel felt tears prick his eyes. He realized then that the story of his life had changed forever. He was no longer the man crushed by poverty, ashamed of his failures. He was a father who had been given the chance to raise his son with hope, dignity, and dreams. And it was all because one man, despite having everything, had chosen to see the worth in someone who had nothing. As time went on, Tiago continued to grow, both as a footballer and as a young man of character. He began volunteering at the foundation alongside his father, delivering food to families, playing with children in need, and sharing his own story of transformation. People who met him were struck not only by his talent, but by his humility. He never boasted about knowing Ronaldo personally. Instead, he spoke of values, respect, perseverance, compassion. When Thiago turned 18, Cristiano surprised him with a gift that left him speechless: the opportunity to join a youth academy abroad. "This is your chance," Ronaldo told him. "Take it. But remember, no matter how far you go, carry kindness with you." Miguel, though fearful of letting his son leave, knew this was destiny unfolding. He hugged Thiago tightly at the airport, whispering, "Your life is your own now. But wherever you go, remember the miracle that brought us here. Be that miracle for someone else one day." Thiago left with tears in his eyes but fire in his heart. For Miguel, the years that followed were quieter, but filled with pride. He continued his work, continued his friendship with Ronaldo, and watched from afar as his son carved his own path. And though the world sometimes still tried to twist stories, though whispers of cynicism never fully disappeared, Miguel no longer cared. He had learned that the truth of a man's life is not written in headlines, but in the lives he touches. And so when people asked him about Cristiano Ronaldo, Miguel would smile and say, "Yes, he is a great footballer. Yes, he is one of the best the world has ever seen. But to me, he is more than that. He is the man who reminded me that dignity cannot be taken by poverty, that hope can be restored by kindness, and that friendship is the greatest victory of all." In the end, the story of Cristiano and Miguel was not one of fame or wealth, but of humanity. It was proof that even the brightest stars can bend down to light the path of those in darkness, and that one act of compassion can ripple across generations. And as Miguel walked the streets of Lisbon in his later years, often with children running to greet him, asking to hear again the story of how Ronaldo had helped him, he would tell it not with shame but with pride. For he knew now that his life, once marked by despair, had become a testament to the enduring legacy of kindness.